Hello, everybody. Welcome to TOC Shows with One Whole and an Echo. I am your host for today, Joy Miracle. I'm the Chief Coordinating Officer at One Whole and an Echo.
And I am Chifundo Mazingira, Arts Lead, Malawi base at One Whole and an Echo.
I'm Simon. Welcome to this podcast. I'm Production Manager at One Whole Echo Malawi.
You are listening to TOC Show.
Today, our topic is mental health and suicide in Malawi. We're just going to talk a bit about the current situation, just our thoughts about what's been going on, a little bit of, verbal analysis and conversation, discussion, debacle on the topic. Let's start with just giving a bit of a rundown on what the current situation is.
Right. So, we have a challenge actually here in Malawi in terms of suicide. There are a couple of things that are happening, or I would say source or causes of this suicide in Malawi. But I'll just mention a few maybe that I've discovered that is trending to economic problems. I will talk about because the issue to do with find money to feed the family, and apart from that, we have also health problems. Something to do with infertility. Infertility levels are high in Malawi. You find that each and every family, at the family level, whereby I would categorize like there is 10 families. Out of that 10 families, you find there is just only maybe 8 families who are struggling to get babies. At the end of the day, it's affecting the whole family. You find one of these people, they might commit suicide. One of the factors that are contributing to the suicide, especially when you go to the rural areas, even in the urban, you find these challenges are common. Not only that, sometimes it's to do with marital status. You find maybe recently had an issue to do with a certain boy who was 17 years. He shot himself because he had a quarrel with his girlfriend. So it was something to do with love. Maybe it was about age, I'm not really sure. But these are the things that are happening frequently. So indeed, there must be something that can be done. Even we talk of civic education, or maybe talk. I don't know how we can go about it, but these are the things that are happening. These are factors that are causing suicide in Malawi.
Yeah, I think that's a good start when I talk about suicide. Now, for me, I'm just going to branch out on the mental health side, where there is awareness. Awareness has been on the rise for a long time, but still actually understanding what mental health is. I think there's still, especially in Malawi, it's there. Everybody knows about it, and a lot of people take initiative, but we're still fighting it. Well, we're still in the culture, mostly trying to balance to understand what exactly that is. You know, with maybe older generation, we're talking about baby boomers, and even some millennials are still trying to understand if that's something that should even be considered, seeing it just in the perspective, Malawian perspective. Now it comes as well blended in with the suicide, what mental health is, and even when we start to talk about the other side of mental health, when we're talking about it positive, like, okay, what is self-care, all those things, now how to exactly encompass that, and even something where I'm a lot of experience with as well, how to bring in mental health in workspaces. So yeah, I think those are things as well to actually how to talk about that and exactly to understand all that and bring it into our current context.
Welcome back to One Whole and an Echo's TOC Show, where every time we chat, we'll show. This podcast is here to remind you of how each moment and each conversation matters. If you've not heard the buzz already, we are on a number of social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or One Horn and Echo at One Horn and Echo. So if you're not following, follow us now. Let's go back to the show.
I find it quite interesting that you brought up the age factor into mental health. We'll talk a bit about suicide as well, but I just wanted to start there. You said baby boomers are still trying to figure out, or that age bracket is trying to figure out what mental health really is. So I did a quick search to find out what the age demographics are in Malawi. And funnily enough, the age 0 to 4 in Malawi is 45% of the population.
14, okay. Ooh, wow.
45% of the population is 0 to 14. 65 and over is 2.68% of the population. And then we have 15 to 64, 54.8% of the population. So, and to be fair, that is quite a big range. 15 to 64, that's almost like 50 years compared to the 0 to 14. But that's quite a big number still in terms of the youth. Or I don't know if you call them youth or children, actually. But you mentioned that baby boomers are struggling to understand mental health, and I was just thinking, why, from your opinion, why do you feel like the fact that they're not understanding mental health is affecting the population of Malawi as a whole as much as it is in terms of understanding mental health, in terms of addressing mental health needs?
Well, it comes with some stories where you find out of even these baby boomers will be telling that children, back in the day, we used to go through so much hardships, but we got through it. And you people, this is what you're going through, and we are not understanding what is this, just as simple as that, where now even it comes to the aspect of now with globalization and all this social media, even that, it's like maybe as well they're trying to say, is it really in the culture, or now it's just some things were taken from elsewhere? Now, years ago, when it was actually now being discussed a lot in South Africa, Zuma was the president then, and it was like, there's not even a word for stress in Zulu, Xhosa, nothing like that. We don't have this in Africa. It's something that the white man is bringing. That was his words. Well, there's nothing like that in our language. So that was even the part of like what they were even trying to understand there as well. But eventually, I can see that at least it caught on. So maybe that's also something that in a way also getting there with.
Interesting. The aspect of race in mental health and all of that, that's an interesting angle to bring in. Simon, you also mentioned a bit about like how relational dynamics can affect people's willingness to live, in terms of like the example you gave about a quarrel with a girlfriend. I feel like it kind of ties in with this whole thing of understanding and perspective, and the role that perspective plays on mental health, on willingness to live, on suicide rates. How do you feel at the moment, from your understanding, how do you feel people like process through issues in relationships, process through issues, and it might not be like romantic relationships, but also like friendships, marriages, family, so that's romantic, but families, extended family, like what do you feel is the pattern, or is there a way that people systematically go through the difficulties of processing emotions and come on the other side, or do people just kind of throw themselves in and hope for the best?
All right, so in these scenarios, it's like most of the people they fail to talk or to share what they're experiencing in their relationship or in their family. So they call it God to a friend, especially men, or just stay idle to that thing without even sharing it to someone. So it starts affecting their mental safety. As a result, they will think of committing suicide. So I think mainly is thing to do with not sharing what you are experiencing, what you are having at that moment. So you just keep it on yourself, right? Without even go and share with friends or even your family members. And the result, you think of just killing yourself. As I gave example in an area like financial, this young man had issues with his girlfriend. Instead of maybe discussing it with his parents, I believe he was afraid maybe to mention it to his parents. In Africa, when you're at a young age like 15, 17, when you're in a relationship, it's always hard even to tell your parents that you're in a relationship. Maybe it's different from maybe in other continents like Asia, Europe. Maybe it's different from us in Africa. So you just keep it quiet. You just keep idle without even telling your parents that you're having challenges. Maybe you have a girlfriend. You will think maybe your parents will shout at you. So this was the scenario of this young man. He just stayed idle. Was just feeling maybe guilty or something. And the result was just thinking of killing himself. And it happened that way. So we discovered, and I discovered that he had mental issues, and it get to the point whereby he thought of killing himself. So the point of killing himself came in because he couldn't share what he was experiencing. He wrote something like he wrote a piece of a message on a piece of paper of why he has killed himself. So when people came in, find there is a lifeless body there and the piece of paper side explaining why he has killed himself. Those issues to do with quarrel whatsoever in that relationship. But he couldn't tell his parents, he couldn't tell his friends. So it went beyond, alright, mental health itself to the point of thinking maybe I just have to kill myself. So the issue is to do with not sharing what you're experiencing with others. I believe he went through maybe go to someone to share what he's experiencing in his relationship. I think he couldn't kill himself. So these are one of the factors that mean they just keep idle, but also cultural factors whereby in Africa you can't tell your parents that you're in a relationship. When you're young, the age of 17, 16, 20, you cannot go and tell your parents, no, I have a relationship and this is what is happening in my relationship. They won't hear you. Maybe they will end up chasing you in their home. So these are one of the factors that lead to the issues.
In the past, sometimes, so Joy, sometimes you tell me now from now in the aspect of like as a female, because we're now talking about now in terms of like relationships, all these things. Sometimes what I've seen, girls don't like it when a man is showing that, hey, I'm going through a tough time. Like that is an actual thing where, yeah, you might be promoting, yeah, men should be talking more, but I'm seeing it, experienced it, but at the same time, women are like, no, why are you showing yourself to be weak? It's like, there's that, and at the same time as well, I'm like even that Simon was talking about how do you talk to parents, like there's that cultural aspect of talking to parents, like if you're in a relationship, but that sometimes people have actually taken the step to say something is not right, and now goes back to them not understanding sometimes, what do you mean? Why are you going through this? It doesn't make sense. That's just a simple thing. So now what happens when people are the victims, I'll use victim, maybe I'll use a better word, but are trying to actually say and communicate, but now there's that backlash.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to start with the parents thing and then I'll go into the men's thing because I feel like the men's one might be a bit longer for me. But I think on the parent side, like I feel, I guess, just looking at my own relationship with my parents, who are Malawians, I think at this present moment, I feel free to communicate certain things, like in terms of like, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel depressed, I feel this, and even like relational things as well. I feel free to talk about that, whether that's friendships, whether it's romantic feelings, etc. But I don't think it's always been that way. I think it's something that was cultivated. And I think one thing I feel in cultural settings where there's expectation put on relational dynamics is that sometimes you may feel like you don't have the strength or the capacity or the power to cultivate what you need for your relational dynamic, because of maybe the pressure that's coming on you from, I guess, your older people, or but like, I think from my case, like, I remember we've, like, with me with my parents, we've had conversations about, you know, when you communicate this way, it makes me feel that way. But I had to get that courage, and some of that courage came from friends, you know, encouraging those emotional aspects in me to say, actually, I noticed that you struggle to say this and that, or every time, like, I used to have a thing where I would always say sorry, like sorry, like all the time. And a friend called me out on that and was like, why are you always saying sorry? What are you sorry for? You haven't done anything, you know, that kind of thing. Which made me realize, okay, I actually don't have to apologize for everything. I need to pay attention to myself and not just what other people are saying to me, and find the meeting point, as opposed to just receive everything that's been given to me. So I think I would encourage, in a vulnerable setting with parents, to see it as a two-way relationship, even when there are expectations that you feel like you can't meet, and approach it from that perspective, to say, okay, whatever my parents are voicing, I don't know if parents would like me saying this, but I'm saying it anyway, but whatever my parents are voicing is their voicing. They're saying their side. They're not saying my side. They're saying their side. And I need to find my side and see where my side meets. And if I can't find a meeting point, then I need to start working to figure out, okay, what's the next step to that meeting point? Whether it's, okay, it might not be the big thing, like in Simon's example, where some teenager's telling his parents that he's got a girlfriend. It could be that, oh, actually, I don't feel like I can say that I like someone. You could start from that point. Like, I remember, I don't know how old I was. I remember having a conversation with my dad. I think I was even on primary, like early secondary, I can't remember, about a crush. And I used a friend's situation as opposed to mine, to say, to test the waters and say, oh, you know, my friend says she likes someone and this, that. And just to hear how he'd respond, and then let it correct my perspective of what I assume my parent would respond in that situation, to say, okay, actually, if you say that about my friend, then possibly he might be able to say that about me. So I might be able to say this because I've tested the crush side, but maybe not the relationship side, and I can work my way. So it's a process. You only have one set of parents, or, you know, even with step, you know that they're only one person. So see it as a relationship and not like a magic switch. And then on the men's side, it's quite an interesting thing to try and articulate, because I feel women, I guess, or females, I don't know if I'm speaking for everyone, it's quite a lot of pressure to speak for everyone, but we often we're often intuitive in terms of like the emotional aspect of things, like in terms of, okay, a man is doing this and he's doing this as the outside thing, but there's clearly something beyond that. But I think the issue or the gap comes where they maintain the act in terms of like this image that's being presented of who or where they're at. Your question was around like vulnerability and how when they start being vulnerable, there's like a pushback. And I think that's because of that complex of, you created this play and I'm watching that play, or you're creating this movie, this image of yourself, and I'm watching that. But at the same time, there's this other side of you that I've known is there, but you've also not created a play or scene for that. So when you have pushback from women, from my perspective, I feel like it comes from that wrestle between the two plays that are happening simultaneously. You're seeing who you're presenting, like, oh, this guy is presenting himself to be a caring, loving, strong, providing person. which is lovely to watch and lovely to enjoy, and a beautiful experience. But on the other side, I know there's this other aspect, and I think the thing that would be helpful in terms of vulnerability is to, firstly, as a man or as a person, think of the balance between those two plays and own them both, because that naturally flows out into how you communicate. If you're rejecting a side of you and accepting another side of you out of love, a woman is only forced to reject the side you're rejecting. And when you start to accept it, it will take time for them to start to accept it too. So I think that's one aspect. And I also feel like there's an aspect about the being okay with your vulnerability looking different to a woman's vulnerability, and also giving language for that, because I feel like we've had a lot more opportunity to see what vulnerability looks like for women, but not so much opportunity to understand what vulnerability looks like for men. And in terms of how that can be presented, that's something I feel like only men can show us. Like, what does it look like for men, to teach the world what vulnerability looks like for men? And I've seen different things like out there of like men trying to create like podcast initiatives about vulnerability for men. There's this guy on the internet who does a vulnerability for men like program, I think with boys. I know someone personally as well who has a creative organization that deals with seeing the king in men as like teenagers and boys. I feel like it goes beyond what's out there already. I feel like it goes into the thing of accepting what's natural to men, like in terms of when you have a moment of vulnerability. I feel like, I don't know, I'm not a man, so I can't say like this is the truth, but I feel like there might be a pattern with men where when they have a vulnerable moment, the immediate reaction is to shut it down and process it before it's processed out, so that when it's coming out, it's not raw, it's not real, it's just almost like I'm calculating when and how to say this. But what does it look like for a man to be raw and vulnerable in the moment? How do we create like experiences where every woman is experiencing vulnerability in the moment, and not just anger, because I feel like that's something that fallen back on, and that sometimes is a natural beginning point in learning how to be vulnerable, is anger, because you, especially where you feel your emotions have no room, they kind of end up coming out as like trying to with power and force, to try and make space for themselves. But I think it goes beyond that to look at, okay, do men actually pay attention to the sources of their feelings, and do they actually acknowledge those out loud publicly? Like, this makes me sad, like using like ownership words, like I feel sad because you said that about me, and it reminded me of my childhood, or something like that. Those kind of things do help. A guy called Belief in Fatherhood is a really good example of things like that, because he's been consistent in teaching that thing of vulnerability amongst men. And for me, I feel like that's a place I've seen an example of a vulnerable man on a public kind of stance. I do have like friends and stuff I feel are also quite good at vulnerability as a man, but I don't know what you'd say to that, but those are my immediate thoughts.
Thank you very much. Didn't know any of that. There's a certain way women show it, express rather.
I do feel like it's different. I'm trying to find a different example, but the immediate thought that's coming to mind is in tech. So in coding, they would name like the plus sign when you're wiring stuff and everything. There's the plus and the negative, and they call the plus the receivers. That's just such a putting myself on the spot. But yeah, I think the plus is the receivers and the negative is the giver or something like that. But like the negative is like the giver is normally referred to as the male, masculine. Even in tech, yeah, there's the masculine and the feminine in terms of the plus and the minus. And when you think of it from that perspective, if I'm like a wire, right, I receive, say, information from one side, and on the other side I'm giving it. So naturally, as like taking back to like women and men, naturally how you process vulnerability is different. The rawness of electricity received from you is different to the rawness of electricity given. So simplifying the example, if you think of and say my brother, right, having the same parents, if my brother gets angry, my father gets angry, how I receive it's different to how brother might receive it. I might say it as my father's telling me he's not willing to give XYZ. And a man, I don't really know what a man would think, but just from the receiver-giver perspective, it could be, a man could say, oh, this person's angry because I have not given them XYZ, which is very different. Like, anger is because this person hasn't given me, and a woman might think anger is because this person does not want to give to me. So you see, there's that kind of like different dynamic. Being vulnerable and creating that room for a space where women can see how men are vulnerable at a raw level consistently will create room for understanding that aspect, because it's a wiring. Like, if you're the plus and you're the minus, like, you are the plus and you're the minus. Like, you can't change that. That's your side of the electricity reception, or of the whole bigger exchange of information. So yeah, I feel like, and it robs the world, I feel, when men don't show the rawness of the vulnerability, because then we think that all sorts of processing information is the same, when it really isn't, and by wiring it's not meant to be. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want also to comment on the issue of social media. That is also a contributing factor to suicide. Recently, because we have seen so young women and men joining social media platforms, as a result, maybe they have made a mistake on the social media, maybe posting something which is not in it. They also turn that bully into mental issues, whereby they find it difficult to process, gain back who they are because of social media. So this is mostly happening to the young ones. These young ones are just joining the social media platform, how to handle issues to do with bullies on social media. You know, a human is a human. Sometimes you can post something which is unnecessary. People start mocking you, talking a lot of stuff on the social media, and in the result it leads to mental health. And you find people are also committing suicide because of that.
You are listening to TOC Shows.
And that's a wrap from us here at One Hall and an Echo. Thank you for listening to our first episode on mental health and suicide in Malawi. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, as well as check out our website, www.onehallandanecho.com. See you around.